Welcome to Create Wealth Through Franchising Podcast and Kim Daly TV. I am your host, Kim Daly. I want to educate, motivate, and inspire your business ownership journey by interviewing CEOs, leaders, sales coaches, and exceptional franchisees to learn their valuable insights and strategies that we can apply to our own business ownership dreams. Now, on to the show. Welcome back to Create Wealth Through Franchising Podcast and Kim Daly TV. I am your host, Kim Daly, and today we have a special guest in studio. His name is Micah Keith, all the way from Orem, Utah. He's not a skier, but Kim Daly wishes he was. Micah, welcome to the studio of Kim Daly TV.
Kim, great. Thanks so much for having me here. Really appreciate it.
He may not be a skier, but he is a pioneer, and he is going to share early news about an emerging brand. We here at Kim Daly TV have had the founder and the president of the brand on, and you guys seem to like that episode. So I've been dying to get a franchisee from the Milkshake Factory here to share some early news. So we want to back up, Micah, before we just start talking about, well, you're not even open yet, so we're not really going to talk about that. We want to back up and we want to tell the listeners your story. What problem in your life were you solving for? What happened in your life when you started to think, gosh, I need to do something different? And how did that thought or conversation lead you eventually to franchising?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kim, and kind of where I was in my life. So just to back up a little bit about my experience. So my professional career has mostly been in the CPG world, consumer packaged goods, where I've been a brand manager. So I've been running brands in the grocery store. And so for those that aren't familiar, I know when I say that to someone like I'm in brand management or I'm CPG, most people are like, I have no idea what that is.
Speak English.
Yeah, exactly. When you walk into a grocery store and you see those brands on the shelf, the way kind of that industry works is every single brand is almost kind of its own mini business. And so you have marketers, brand managers that are behind that brand and basically run that within a larger company. So a company will have 20 different brands like a Nestle or a Heinz or Blue Diamond. They'll have all these different brands and brand manager teams behind that are running that. So that's what I've been doing. I started my career at Heinz, worked, I got to, as my dream, I got to run Bagel Bites, which was just, as a little kid, I just love those. And also done Smart Ones, went over to Nestle where I worked on Libby's Pumpkin and Buitoni and Nestle Toll House. And then I went over to Blue Diamond Growers, actually, where I ran Almond Breeze almond milk across the US and Canada. So had a wonderful career. It was going very well. And then what happened was I got a really awesome offer to come to a very small baked cheese snack company called Sonoma Creamery. They said, come on in, Micah, run all of our marketing, lead the way. We really want to take this only in club brand to retail, which is a huge opportunity. Here's this great package. You'll get a cut of the company. Oh, and by the way, you can work fully remote. You can work wherever you'd like to work. And so at that point in my life, which was about a year and a half ago, I had 7 children. The oldest was 15 down to 2 years old. We had been living in Ohio, Pennsylvania, California.
Moving for the job, not to interrupt.
Exactly.
Moving for the job. Okay.
And then at this point in our life, we've got my wife and I, we've got parents that are aging. They're getting in their 70s. We're at this point, we're like, you know what? I should take this opportunity. Let's go live near family and kind of just totally just settle and be close to family and kind of have those connections.
Yeah, with a 15-year-old in high school, right? Like he or she would probably like to have some stable high school career, right? Yeah, good for you guys. And good for you for making that decision. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we've been every 5 years we've been kind of moving to the next opportunity, and the kids have been wonderful with it, and so is my wife. But it was on this one then when we went to Sonoma that it went really well for 6 months. At the end of 6 months, they had hired me and a few others to okay, we're going to go from club, we're going to get into retail, big strategic push. And basically what happened was they were like, oops, we bit off way more than we can chew. The cost, the investment, what banks and our investors need, this isn't going to work out. So we're going to go back to doing what we're doing, and we are so sorry.
Oh,
and so
no.
yes, I was a week away from closing on my home. when they told me this. And so I'd already, left my previous place where I'd moved there for Blue Diamond. And then, so then I was like, wow, okay, what do I do next? And I was like, okay, well, do I continue the path I've been going? Let's go look for the next corporate opportunity. Do I continue to move to Utah, figure it out there? And as most, for those that don't know, I mean, there's not many food companies in Utah. I mean, the most are on the coasts or in Chicago. Denver has a good cluster, but not really many in Utah. So then I was like, okay, well, what are my options? What am I looking at? And so I had in my back pocket, I could start my own consulting firm, just do what I've been doing as a freelance consultant. There's always needs in the CPG industry to like fill in or do special projects. So I started looking around, and what was kind of cool is actually at this time, because I was taking this role fully remote, I let them know, hey, I'm uprooting my children from, at that time we are in California, we're moving to Utah to be near family. That was the biggest cluster family. I'd already aligned with Sonoma Creamery. Hey, I'm uprooting my kids. I don't know if I'm going to do this again. I'm going to fully take advantage of the fully remote, and I'm going to travel across the country for a few months with my kids before we settle in Utah, just to see the country. And so when this happens, we're like, oh, should we still do that or not? And we're like, you know what? Absolutely, we're going to still do it. So we spent a few months actually in a van,
The Brady
traveling.
Bunch over here. I love this story. I'm like on the edge of my seat, Micah.
Miles, 11 national parks, tons of different things, like southern part of the country, from January through March. It was pretty amazing. And so, but I just took that time we really worked. We'd stay in Airbnbs during the work week. I would, during that time, network and kind of figure out, okay, what opportunities are out there? What do I want to do next? And it was in all that contemplation and that kind of really cool experience that I was, at the end of the day, I was like, okay, I'm going to start my own consulting firm. I'm just going to keep doing what I've been doing. There's no opportunities in Utah. If I do want the opportunities that look the most enticing to me, I'd have to move to East Coast, to Portland, to California, Southern California. And I was just, at that point, I had already built up my whole family, my kids, everyone expecting to live near family. So I was like, we're going to follow through and we're going to do this. So that's what got me to that point where actually, okay, I'm starting this consulting firm. So at this point, I had a franchise consultant who had reached out to me and was like, hey, have you thought about franchising? I'm like, oh, let's explore it. And so they gave me like a half a dozen different things to look at, and none of them I was like, none of these just like feel right. The closest one I got to was a kind of a smoothie shop, and we happened to be in Florida where one of them were. And we went in, and I was like, let's check this out. And after tasting the product and getting that, I was like, no, this is not. I'm not feeling this one. And then I was like, I'm not gonna franchise. It's not working out. And so that's kind of like, I started consulting, and then actually it was in the consulting, as I was getting that going, I was reaching out to all my past friends and colleagues, letting them know, hey guys, I'm starting my own consulting. If you ever have any needs, let me know. Just really starting my business, and I was able to get busy very quickly. But it was in that process, actually, I was talking to a fellow colleague from my MBA school, and she was like, oh, you know who you need to talk to? Our friend Dan Reese. I was like, Dan, yeah, Dan and I work together at Heinz. I'm like, what's Dan up to? Is he still in the CPG world? Is he doing something else? She's like, you'll be really surprised. And so that's when I reached out to Dan, and then Dan gave me his kind of story, his journey as he went.
By the way, Dan is the president of the Milkshake Factory, for those who are following this amazing story.
So it was like, I reached out to Dan. He told me about his journey. Yeah, I was in CPG, stayed at Heinz, whereas I moved on to Nestle. And then he from there got connected with the Edwards family, yada, yada, yada. And then also the Edwards family had this wonderful, amazing little shop that's been there for more than 100 years that all of a sudden is just naturally, organically growing like crazy in Pittsburgh. And they're like, Dan, come on over, help us figure out what we should do with this. And so as I learned more about that, I was like, that is so intriguing. What is the Milkshake Factory? I was in Pittsburgh for 5 years for grad school and with Heinz. Like, I remember the Milkshake Factory on the south side. And he's like, yeah, I guess after I left, that's when it just really started exploding. And then I learned, yeah, it's a milkshake shop and a chocolate shop combined. It's got this amazing family legacy and story. The products are amazing. You got to try them. And as I learned more about this, as I knew a little bit about the Utah consumer, we'd come here a lot to be with family, to know that. And if there's one thing that Utah consumers love is they love sugar. They're not as much into coffee. They're not as much into alcohol.
Because they're out skiing and they need sugar to recover.
exactly right. Exactly right. I mean, they're the most kids per capita in the entire country. I mean, there's a reason we need our sugar fix. So I was like, I feel like this concept would do amazing in Utah. And so I started doing the due diligence. I still was consulting. I was still getting that going. And I was very fortunate to really get busy immediately and get that going. But then the more I learned about the milkshake factory, the more I was like, I can't pass this opportunity up. I knew Dan Reese. I got to meet the Edwards family. Gosh, just amazing people. Dan has always been just such high integrity, very transparent. He was not like, I mean, he had not even registered the Milkshake Factory at this point when I was talking with him, but he's not pushy. He's not a salesman. He's just like, hey, here's all the information. Take it or leave it. But if it's appealing, like, I think it's a really great opportunity. And so, yeah, I was sold. All the things I looked through, just like, how are as the FTD came out, scouring that to look at that and how healthy they were. I went out to the first discovery day. I went to 7 of the 11 things just to check the brand. And I mean, as a brand guy, marketing guy, I was like, they got this down. And like, with Dan Reese at the head, he's a CPG guy like myself. Yeah, totally amazing. So I mean, all these boxes were checked. And so I was like, sign me up. I'm in. This is absolutely going to score so well. And I think in Utah, especially the consumer's going to love it.
So, all right, I got to go all the way back to the startup CPG company, right? Which definitely had sadly, the 90% of startup businesses don't make it success story, right? Which is a failure story, right? So that's kind of sad for you. And you got caught up in that. And so I love how, like, I guess a consultant who was probably on LinkedIn or something found you and was kind of introduced you to the idea of franchising. So then you had this like familiarity with franchising. So it was already sort of like swimming around in your consciousness, right? And then just like by things happening. Now I want to talk about the human side of this story. So, when I listened to your story, that was the first time I've heard it. For the followers out there, I promise we did not rehearse this. What I love is that your life got stirred up. Like you thought you had a path and then it all fell apart, but like you didn't fall apart. Like, so it demonstrates already, I think, to me anyway, like what's deep inside of you is so solid. And I'm sure there were moments where you and your wife were kind of freaking out because you have 7 mouths to feed, but or 9, I guess.
Well, okay, that's fine. What's fun is actually we just had another baby 2 weeks ago, so now we got it. It's great. What's cool too is I'm starting this milkshake factory. I'm like, hey, maybe I don't need to hire anyone. I just got
add another baby to the mix. You got a whole team of people that eventually are going to grow up that you can employ. Right, it's so good though. It's so good. But like for those listeners out there who want everything to be perfect all the time, this story is so fun because it just shows you how life is so messy, right? You think you're on this trajectory and then it's like, whoop, you're falling off the cliff and then you got to pick yourself back up. And what's so amazing about that is that's exactly how owning a business is, even inside of a franchise, right? Now you have mustered the courage to say yes to a brand new franchise. You are a pioneering franchisee for the Milkshake Factory. So with your setup, I understand now more like why you were able to make that leap of faith, because it is a leap of faith, right? But tell the listeners more about, are you really just betting on Dan and the people you met? What was the connection that helped you say, I'm doing this without reservation?
Yeah, Kim, that's a great question. And Dan, absolutely leadership is a part of that. And the great thing about, like, I just know Dan, I trust him implicitly. I just knew him as a Heinz and how smart and intelligent he was then. And again, how much integrity he has and all those things. So that was like kind of a no-brainer. Yeah, okay, you got that. But that doesn't make a business. Like, I'm not, just because someone's a wonderful person and really smart and intelligent doesn't mean like I want to go into business with you. My experience and what I'm leaning on is, I've been almost 15 years in the marketing space. I've been building brands in the food world. And so when I was looking at the business then, part of what that I lean to is marketing and the brand. Like, how strong is this brand? Is it aligned? Does it have a character or voice? Does it really stand for something? Is it differentiated or is it just a copycat? And as I examined and really looked hard at the Milkshake Factory, how they've been treating it in Pittsburgh, and because I have a lot of the wonderful thing is because I have a lot of connections in Pittsburgh, I can talk to a lot of friends like, do you know the Milkshake Factory? How do you feel about it? All those things, and I talked to a lot of people, and everyone just like it's just amazing. Like I was there. How did I miss this? But again, it exploded after I left, and everyone has such a strong opinion of how amazing this brand is. And then when I went in and checked it for myself, went to as many stores as I could during that discovery day, and then saw how consistent they were, saw the way the people that they hire and kind of that the culture that's there, and then also just the other thing that really just gave me a ton of confidence after seeing the brand was actually the operations. So as I saw behind the scenes during discovery day, all of the intentional thought and tweaks and small details that they focused on to make sure that this functioned and was very efficient. That was really, to me, just gave me that last piece of confidence saying, yeah, this is a winning concept. This is a winning business. Even though I might be the first one, I feel like the calculated risk of this is so low because of everything that I've checked on. So that's what gave me just like, yeah, this is going to do very well. And it's for that reason, Kim, actually, that instead of just saying, yeah, I'll launch one, maybe I'll grow and get two, maybe three. Like I was like, no, like I think this is gonna explode. And Utah being the home of Crumble and being home of other franchises that do really well in sugar, I was like, I feel as soon as this gets out there, people are gonna start snagging everything around me, and I'm just gonna. So I scrounged and I bought 6 locations.
You need one per kid. One per kid.
Yeah, right. So I did that because I just feel so bullish on the opportunity. So it definitely was like, but I was like, how far can I go to kind of get as much territory, because I just feel like this is going to do so well.
This is so great. I want to come back and talk about your dear sweet wife here in just a minute, but what you just said is so amazing, because so many people out there think they've looked at a franchise because they've done research online. And every single thing this man has just said to you, listeners, is what you're looking for is not online, which I say to people all day long, right? And how a brand presents to the consumer is online. The secret sauce, the magic of the opportunity, getting you to think like an investor inside the opportunity only happens when you're inside the brand, when you're able to meet the franchisor and they pull back the curtain and they show you, this is who we really are. This is what makes us a great franchise opportunity, right? Anybody can launch a brand based on a good product, but that doesn't mean that goes on to become a big, solid American brand. It's the systems, it's the operations, it's the vision of the entire organization, which the Milkshake Factory definitely has. And not to go without mention, I mean, you said it in the beginning, this is a 100-year-old family, generational, 4 generations of family have carried these recipes forward, right? I believe the original original family members were from Lebanon, as I recall from the interview with Dana Edwards. And her grandmother or great-great-great-grandparents came from Lebanon, and all they knew how to do was make chocolate. And so when they came to Pittsburgh, they became chocolatiers, and then the kids grew up, and then they went to the Pentagon, and then they took the chocolate shop to the Pentagon, right? You guys, those who follow my podcast, are you remembering the story this was told? So anyway, I just love that part, and it just speaks so much to, if you're curious about a brand, don't talk yourself out by looking at stuff you're reading online. You have to get inside and meet the people and do the proper due diligence that an investor can only do. And that's through a consultant or being directly connected to the franchisor. So that kind of caps all that you just said, which was amazing. So let's talk about your dear, sweet, wonderful, amazing, newly mothered again wife, and how, because this is the human side of this story, right? So think of this poor woman, right? She's moved around the country with you all these years, has all these babies. That alone is like, makes me just want to hug her for like 1 solid hour. So now you're moving, the whole thing falls apart, how your whole life is paid for falls apart. You pick yourself up and say, hey, I'm not going back to a job. I'm going to become an entrepreneur. So how does this conversation go down in the Keith household?
I think you've done this before. You kind of, you're singing. Absolutely, that's a part of it. Well, I
Want to
mean,
be the fly on the wall for a minute. Take us back in time.
the initial, I mean, when I got the news, I was just, I've never had something like this happen before. So it was it was a shock. I was actually amazed just how well I was able to handle it, just because I was just like, like everything, I just, deep down, I just have a very, very deep sense of like, everything happens for a reason. And when I think of just what I've built up over my life and my career, I just feel like, it's going to work out. Like I'm going to find somewhere, some way to find a way to take care of my family and then to make this work. So I was actually very, very cool through that. And then as I told my wife, the beautiful thing is I also thought she was going to just fall apart and be like,
Of
what?
course.
Like bomb. And certainly there's moments of panic and like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? But no, she was actually really what I'm just so grateful for with my wife is just how much trust she has in me. When we got married, I mean, I she jokes, you took me away from my family, but I trust you. We're gonna make it all work. And I let her know, like, with the direction I want to go with my professional life, it's likely I'm not gonna be here in Utah. Like, there's only so many industries, so many things. I know your family's here, but like, I've got some big dreams, and I really want to take care of my family. And if you let me do this, I know the money and the time will be there. We can visit family, we'll be with them, and we're not going to be stuck somewhere else. And for the most part, that turned out to be true. Like even though we lived in different places, gosh, we were just very blessed to have money and opportunity to come back visit family, and it's worked out. And so when this bombshell dropped, though, of like 15 years in, and then this big opportunity, it wasn't too big of a shock just because it was a risk. We knew going into it, it's a smaller company, a little bit more risky, but if it turns out, wow, this could be like, I could write my own ticket from this point on. If it doesn't turn out, well, we'll cross that bridge. And it turned out like, yeah, it didn't turn out. Like they just bit off more than they could chew. So she was great about just, what, Mike, I trust you. We're going to make this work. There was a lot of like trepidation though on our plans to go across the country and to be with, and to just have this experience as a family, because she was like, oh, we just moved to Utah, buckle down,
We
like
save that
figure it out.
money. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
exactly. And then we just kind of waited out. Well, yeah, I mean, we could, but like we're paying rent or a mortgage or like whatever, and the expenses of living there versus, we're maybe spending a little bit more, but we're staying across and having this experience that we're probably never going to have again.
Right.
And so at the end of the day, we're like, you know what, we're gonna bite the bullet. And we're gonna go for the experience more than the money on this one. And thankfully I got a severance that really just kind of let us make that happen. And we had an incredible experience. So then when we get around, that was one thing, got through that, and there was still a lot of anxiety. Like she really was like, as we're doing this, we're getting to Texas, and my wife, I've been able to travel a little bit more with business and other things. My wife, for the most part, besides just living where I've lived, hasn't done a lot of traveling. So when we were on this trip, we're in Texas, and like we're gonna go through the South, which a lot I've done a little bit of the South, but not a lot. She's done none. So she's like, I don't know anything about Louisiana or Mississippi or Alabama. Like, you know what? How about we get to Texas and we just turn around and we're good? That was a little trip. Like, no, we are in. We're going coast to coast. We're going for it. And it ended up like, I mean, we just fell in love with the South and the experiences we had along. I mean, we did the whole Florida Panhandle, Everglades, and like Miami, and like the beaches, and just it was just an incredible experience. And it's like we're now actually a year later. My wife's like, I am itching to do something like that again. That was so amazing.
It's so good.
And so that was really great. And then now we finished up, and then I'm like, hey, I'm going to do my own consulting. She was like, that's no problem. That was no issue. In fact, she was almost like, why don't you just do that for the rest of your life? Because I love you being home. I love you having a flexible work schedule. Love all these things. I'm like, okay, I could, but Kim, personally, I was just like, as a W-2 employee and also even as a consultant, in a way, I'm just trading my time for money. And if I don't work, if I don't put in my hours,
Right.
I don't get paid. And I would love to build something that I can just get going and operate, and then I could work on other things, or I could focus on my family as they're growing and all those other things. And that's where, when I saw the Milkshake Factory and creating this type of business, I was like, this is really, really cool. So then we get to the point where I made the decision, doing Milkshake Factory, I'm going to I'm going to kind of extend ourselves, and I'm going to get as many territories as I can. That's when it got real. And that's when she's like, time out.
I
Okay,
think we
hold on.
lost listeners like minutes ago when it got real, but I love that this is when it got real, guys. When he's down, should he do one or should he do six?
This gets real, because that's when I'm like, I'm gonna go all in. Like, in order to finance it and get this big area, like I'm going to, I've been built up a 401k. Let's do a Robs, so I'm not having to do so much. And then also we had personal savings, and because we sold our house, we do have a good chunk of equity and also savings there, so like that could help as well. In addition to, I'll probably take a small SBA loan just to start building credit as an entrepreneur, since this is new. And then, I'm going all in. I'm feeling very confident about how that, and that's where
I love
that's where
this.
conversations, lots of, are you really sure, Micah? Like, I trust you, but are you really, like, how are you feeling about this? And so that's taken, that just took a lot of talking through, a lot of her also seeing more of what I'm seeing, so she could see that. And then at the end of the day, again, it came down to, like, she goes, yes, I know your experience. I know who you are as a person. And I know you would not do something on whims. Like, you've got myself and all these kids you got to take care of. So you're not just going to throw out fortunes just to, like, have fun. Like, you're doing this because you truly believe in it. And if you believe in it and trust in it, then, I trust in you. And so that doesn't mean ever since then, there's times where she's like, are you sure? Like, are you sure we're going to do, like, sure you don't want to, like, maybe just do 3 or 2 or 1 to start out and feel it? Like, so those have come up, but and she's wonderful. She's amazing, and it's that trust she has in me that we've been able to get this far.
It's an amazing story. I mean, it's an entrepreneurial roller coaster up and down, and we have followed you now for over 20 minutes. It's just amazing. And I'm going to end this interview or this episode on this note. In my business coaching interviews, I talk about storytelling and the stories that we tell ourselves. And you could take this exact same story in a negative mindset storytelling pattern, and it would have very, very different outcomes. The number one thing that kept me smiling the entire time you were talking, Micah, was just admiring how you and your wife are telling yourselves stories that are built with faith and hope, and you're inspired and you respect each other and you trust. And that attitude is what spirals you to success. Most people think that when you're successful in a business or franchise because you bought the right brand or you bought the right system. But the strategy that you buy is only about 20% of the success equation. The 80% is the tone of this entire conversation, the mindset, how you think, how you talk, and how you act. And you've already set up your family, and most importantly, yourself, for massive success just by being you, this person who dares to take a step, who has a positive attitude, who believes that things happen for a reason, doesn't look back, but just keeps looking forward and keeps dreaming bigger. I mean, this was so inspiring. I know why our good friend Carrie told me, you got to get Micah on your show. God bless you. Thank you so much for being our special guest here today, sharing your story. And this is definitely going to be part 1 of a multi-series interview with you, Micah, because I want to hear what happens after you open for a few months. And then I even might want to talk to you after you take your second trip around the country with 8 children. I think we should document her. I think I need to send my production crew out with you and document.
It's a fun time. We have a good time. It's really great.
Oh, it's so good. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for sharing your story here today.
No, Kim, it was a pleasure. Thanks for letting me share it. And really, just thanks for everything you shared. I love your insight, love your podcast, love everything you're doing. It's a great mission that you're on.
It's amazing. Thank you so much. For those who are not inspired by this story, I guess you should just turn off at this point. But for those who are sitting there thinking, man, I don't know if I want that wild ride, but I'm ready to begin my own journey to find my perfect franchise, you know that I want to be your daily coach. Please follow the email on the screen right now or reach directly out to inquire@kimdaly.tv. That's inquire@kimdaly.tv. And until next time, my name is Kim Daly, and I want to be your daily coach. You can find more content just like this on my YouTube channel at kimdaly.tv. And if you're inspired to take the next step to explore franchises matched to you, please email me right now at inquire@kimdaly.tv. That's inquire@kimdaly.tv.